What I want to know is why she's still down there, scattered across 2 debris fields on the floor of the North Atlantic, and why nobody has ever attempted to bring any substantial part of her back. Because here's the thing, she is the most famous British warship ever lost. She was the symbol of the Royal Navy between the wars. She wasn't lost in battle against a worthy opponent in some obscure action. She was destroyed in front of witnesses, and her destruction shocked the British public in a way that almost no other naval loss ever has. And the answer to why she's still there involves a wreck that took 60 years to find, a single bell brought up from the deep, and a law that makes the entire site untouchable. The Hood was laid down in 1916 and commissioned in May 1920. She was 860 feet long, displaced 47,000 tons fully loaded, and carried 8 15-inch guns in 4 twin turrets. When she entered service, she was both the largest and the fastest capital ship in the world. Her top speed was over 31 knots, which was remarkable for a ship of her size. Between the wars, she became a floating advertisement for British naval power. In 1923 and 1924, she undertook the Empire Cruise, a world tour that covered over 40,000 miles. She was photographed in every major port. Schoolchildren across Britain knew her silhouette. She was, in every sense, the ship. The problem was that she had been designed before the Battle of Jutland in 1916 had permanently changed what people understood about battlecruisers. This is the bit that got me. A battlecruiser is a warship that trades armor for speed. The idea was that she could outrun anything she couldn't outgun. But at Jutland, 3 British battlecruisers exploded and sank with almost total loss of life after taking hits to their magazines. The lesson was clear. Against plunging fire from modern long-range guns, battlecruisers without heavy deck armor were death traps. The Hood had been partially redesigned after Jutland, but only partially. Her deck armor was still inadequate. She was scheduled for a major refit in 1939 that would have doubled her deck armor. The war broke out before that refit could happen. She went into combat in 1941 with the same fundamental flaw that had killed British battlecruisers 25 years earlier. On the morning of May the 24th, 1941, she intercepted the Bismarck in the Denmark Strait between Iceland and Greenland. The range opened at around 14 miles. Both sides fired. The Bismarck's 5th salvo straddled the Hood. At 6:01 in the morning, a 15-inch shell from the Bismarck arced down through the Hood's thinly armored deck and detonated inside one of her aft magazines. What happened next was seen by witnesses on multiple ships. A column of flame shot up from the Hood, hundreds of feet into the air. Her bow reared up out of the water, pointing almost vertically at the sky, and then she was gone. The entire event, from the shell impact to the ship disappearing, took less than 3 minutes. Of her 1,418 men, only 3 survived. They were pulled from the freezing water 2 hours later by the destroyer HMS Electra. The Hood's loss shocked Britain like no other naval defeat of the war. Winston Churchill, on hearing the news, reportedly said only, "Sink the Bismarck." The Royal Navy committed almost every available ship in the Atlantic to doing exactly that. The Bismarck was hunted down and destroyed 3 days later, in part as a direct response to what had happened to the Hood. And then the Hood herself disappeared into memory. She settled on the bottom of the Denmark Strait, and nobody saw her for 60 years. Now, here's where it gets interesting. For 6 decades, nobody went looking for her. Partly this was because nobody knew exactly where she was. The battle had taken place in open ocean, in rough conditions, and the coordinates reported by the other ships present were approximate at best. Partly it was because she was deep. The Denmark Strait drops off into the Erminger Basin, an abyssal area over 9,000 feet deep. That's deeper than the Titanic. Finding anything there required serious equipment, and partly it was simply that nobody had the motivation to try. The Hood was remembered ashore. Her wreck could be left alone. That changed in 2001. A British television company, Channel 4, commissioned shipwreck hunter David Mearns to find both the Hood and the Bismarck for a documentary marking the 60th anniversary of the battle. Mearns had spent 6 years researching the Hood's likely position before the expedition even began. He had the support of the Royal Navy, the Hood Association, and the last living survivor of the sinking, Ted Briggs. On July the 19th, 2001, using side-scan sonar, they found her. And this is the interesting part. What they found was not a ship, it was a debris field. The Hood is not sitting on the bottom of the Denmark Strait in one piece like the Bismarck. She is scattered across an area roughly a mile wide, at a depth of around 9,300 feet. The largest surviving section is the midship area. The bow is separate, the stern is separate. The 600-ton conning tower was found over a kilometre away from the main hull. One of the forward magazines is completely missing, just a hole in the remaining structure where it used to be. The evidence confirmed what British investigators had concluded in 1941. The aft magazine had detonated, and the blast had been so catastrophic it had literally torn the ship apart. In 2002, a year after the wreck was located, the British government officially designated the site as a protected war grave under the Protection of Military Remains Act of 1986. It became illegal to disturb the wreck, to enter it, or to remove anything from it without explicit permission from the Ministry of Defence. And so there are 3 reasons the Hood is still there and will stay there. The first is the depth. At around 9,300 feet, she is in water too deep for any practical salvage operation. Like the Bismarck, she would require dedicated deep-sea submersibles just to reach her. There is no commercial value in raising her and no practical way to do so, even if there was. The second is the state of the wreck. She is not a ship, she is fragments of a ship, scattered across the sea floor. There is nothing coherent to raise. The only identifiable sections are the midship and a few major structural pieces. Salvaging her would mean gathering pieces, and the British government has no interest in doing that. The third, and the most important, is her legal status. She is a designated war grave for 1,415 men. Under British law, she cannot be disturbed. That protection has been in place since 2002, and there is no indication it will ever be lifted. There has been one exception. In 2012, and again successfully in 2015, Paul Allen's research team, in coordination with the British Ministry of Defence and the Hood Association, recovered the ship's bell from the debris field. This was done at the specific request of Ted Briggs before his death in 2008. His wish was that the bell be brought up to serve as a permanent memorial to his shipmates. After conservation, the bell was installed at the National Museum of the Royal Navy in Portsmouth. On the 75th anniversary of the battle, Princess Anne unveiled it. It was rung 8 times in memorial, and it has remained there ever since. That is the only piece of the Hood that will ever be moved. The rest stays where it is. So the Hood is still there because she's almost 2 miles down in the North Atlantic, because she isn't a ship anymore but a field of wreckage, and because British law says she cannot be touched. The largest British warship ever sunk. The greatest single loss of life in Royal Navy history. The pride of the interwar fleet, gone in under 3 minutes on a cold morning in 1941. She is scattered across the sea floor of the Denmark Strait, and apart from a single bell, she is going to stay there forever. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please let me know in the comments and I'll make more of these for more ships. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those, and I'll see you next time.